My name is Yinka Adegoke. I'm the deputy editor of Billboard. I oversee all the business coverage of Billboard, around the world. We're mainly focused on the US, but we kind of have a global view. I kind of also am very keen on international in terms of the music business as well. Billboard is focused mainly on the business of music, but also on the artists as well. And we have several spin-offs of our brand, which covers conferences and live shows and an awards award show that we have every summer. My day probably starts at something like 6:30, 7 a.m. New York time. I'm based in New York. When I start checking emails and sometimes Twitter to see what news is broken out there in the music business. Sometimes things break overnight, be it late time after I went to bed, or or usually out of the UK on a different time zone. So I start by checking my iPhone and seeing what's out there, knowing if I have to put out any fires before I get into the office, it typically goes from there. I get into the office and just see what kind of coverage we're going to give to a particular story, either online or think about a story we'd like to do deeper analysis for in the magazine. It's an interesting story. It started out in Nigeria. I went to Obafemi Awolowo University in Ife, and I studied zoology, and I probably found zoology a little bit boring, and as a way to fill my time and do something I really liked, I used to write on a magazine, which was kind of different from most of the other magazines on campus. Like the old magazines on campus used to be, when I was at university, used to be kind of a little bit more judgmental and kind of questioning of morals of people and stuff like that. And we had this magazine which is just focused on how cool people were, and just gossiping about the kids of the rich and the famous. And magazine was called Rock Shock, and we had a lot of fun. We used to be really creative about the way we tease people. We were never nasty about it. We'd use silly little puns and make fun of people, but it always kind of focused on the people everybody else wanted to be like, and everybody else wanted to be cool like. Now here's a fun fact about Rock Shock was we used to have a student advisor. A guy called Adiremi, that was his last name. I can't remember his first name. So we had a student advisor, and he used to have this friend who used to see them, who used to come into his office and say, I really like what these guys do. I really like what they do. This guy was doing his master's. This is friend of the student advisor was doing his master's at Ife at the time, and it turns out that guy is Dele Momodu, and he went off and created Ovations shortly after. And I kind of liked to, when I started seeing Ovation years later, it was kind of like, wow, this is kind of what we would do without photographs. Because we were students, right? We had nothing, and it was kind of clearly some sort of like inspiration, because nobody else was doing anything like that on any campus, right? So it's kind of like a little fun fact that whenever I see him one day, I'm going to tease him about and say, hey, we created that multimedia. So then I moved to London. I moved back to London, where I was born, and again I kind of worked initially in a hospital. I did all kinds of stuff, and I used to work in a lab, and I got bored of it. And I thought, you know what, I really am going to try and chase this journalism thing that I played around with at university, and I started out working in a couple of small business magazines. I kind of found myself just more interested in writing about business for I don't know I'm not sure why. I just kind of found that more interesting. I think the reason was that it was just that I did a course at university in England where I did a short journalism course, and one of the things I had to do was interview a lady about the loss of her son, who had died in some sort of gas poisoning thing. And this woman telling me about the death of her son just kind of traumatized me. I was like, I do not want to talk to people about real things. I'd rather talk about, sort of abstract things, financials, numbers, that kind of thing. Something that's not going to leave me crying at the end at the end of the interview. And so I got into business journalism, and I worked a couple of places. But my first love was to write about the music business. And I went to Music Week, and I offered to work for free. And I think I did for a week, and then I went away and I worked some other places. And then when I came back, they said, "Yeah, we remember you. Come and work with us." And I started working with them. And I worked with them for a few years, and I helped them. I worked on the launch of a European magazine. I worked with a sort of international magazine. They sent me around different countries in Europe, and I did that for a while, for a few years, and then the internet businesses, the dot-com boom started in the late 90s, and I really wanted to get into that, and I joined a magazine that wrote about that called New Media Age, and I became an editor there. And I still kind of focus on the music side of things, even while editing, because I could see the way back in the 90s that the music business was going to go digital. And I wrote about internet startups and VC funding and all that kind of good stuff, and I did that for, I can't remember, 6-7 years. And while I did that, I kind of became kind of like a British kind of expert on the internet business, on the new media industry, and I would write columns in the Guardian in UK, and then the Financial Times, and a couple of other places, because I was kind of seen as this expert on this stuff, particularly after the dot-com crash, because people wanted to know why this happened and stuff like that. And I kind of always said, this stuff was coming back. This is the new way of doing business. No, just because there was a dot-com crash never meant it was going to go away. And obviously that I now seem like a genius, but everyone, sensible could see that was the way it was going to go. I did that for several years, and then an opportunity came up to work in New York with Reuters, and it was just such a good opportunity. I as much as I enjoyed what I was doing at New Media Age, I couldn't miss the opportunity to work in New York, a city I'd always kind of loved to visit, and I moved to New York to work for Reuters, and wrote about the media industry in the US. What do you need to succeed? I think you need a lot of patience. You need to be careful, not make mistakes in the stories you write. You need to never ever think right? I mean, it's one of my big bugbears when I talk to both young journalists and sort of older journalists. It's some of my things as an editor. I pull people up whenever I stop them. As soon as a journalist starts saying to me, well, I know this, that you don't know anything, right? You're a journalist, you're here to tell stories. And really, all I want to hear is, I want to hear the story. I want you to walk up to anyone you're speaking to. I don't care if it's the CEO of the biggest company in the world. I don't care if it's the market leader there. You want to go up to them and be comfortable saying to them, please explain this complicated issue to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Explain it to me like, you're just talking to someone really stupid, because only when someone breaks it down for you and you really, really absorb the story and understand, can you retell the story in a way that people want to understand. The challenge is still the same though. No, the challenges in journalism are huge, and they're complicated, and because of the internet, and because there's so much free news, free information out there. It's not easy for anyone to think that they control the news anymore. So there are huge challenges to journalism, but there are also huge opportunities. There are huge opportunities in terms of being a startup and finding new ways to get the information out there quicker and in a more flexible way. So journalism is in a state of transition right now. When I started years ago, I honestly never. If you start as a young journalist, you kind of underestimate the power of media. You do. You just take it for granted. You're a young person and you're starting out, and all these people want to do interviews with you. You have all these PR people calling, particularly in business journalism. You have a lot of PR people calling you, make you feel very special, important. And sometimes you just don't never take a step back to think about why that's the case, and that's because traditional media is powerful. Even some small outlets have power within their niche, right? I mean, and it's a very easy thing to just overlook because, that's just the way it is. Actually, it still sometimes catches me by surprise. The power that media has to shape thoughts, to construct received wisdom, and the way everyone just goes along with the flow because they've been told to think this thing, and people go along with it. And that's kind of the power of media. I mean, and sometimes you don't see it because especially when you're in it, you can't see the forest for the trees. It's just right up in your face. Nothing makes me happier than a journalist, as an editor now. So I do less writing now. But as an editor now, I still get a warm, tingly feeling when someone puts a story in front of me, and I just read the first few graphs. Yes, you're telling me a story. You're telling me something that I can't see anywhere else. I mean, I still get a huge buzz when I know anywhere I worked, when you have an exclusive story, and that kind of scary feeling before you hit the button, and to put the story out, because when this. When I used to work at Reuters as an example, and there were times you had a story that could move a market, right? And because all the traders would have Reuters terminals, and you had a story, you'd hit the button and the story would go online, and you just see the shares start to move up or down, and it's a great buzz, and it's the same, and that happens in all kinds of different ways, and not just with markets. It happens with customer sort of reaction, people making calls, people reacting to stories, retweets going when you tweet a story. It's all very exciting. I mean, that's the motivation, right? The motivation is that people are reading this stuff, and people are excited by a story, or people are buzzed by a story because, wow, I really didn't know that. If all you're doing is just writing another version of the same thing that somebody else has, it's kind of, we can all construct great leads and paragraphs. Now, listen, to do great things with Billboard, really, because we've just relaunched our magazine, and I think, and we just relaunched our magazine at a time that I believe, and we certainly believe as a company, but I personally believe that the music industry is on a rebound, right? It's going to be a very exciting, challenging, but very exciting time in the music industry. And the thing is, as a business journalist, I mean, writing about the .com crash, for example, was exciting as a journalist, right? It wasn't just that, all these companies are going out of business. People who were throwing, six-figure sum parties a few weeks ago are, letting people go and stuff. This, as a journalist, these are just great stories. These crazy things are happening. People, and the same thing with the music industry, because things are changing. There's so much, upheaval. People being fired, people being let go, people being employed. Different things are happening, right? It's an exciting time to watch a new business being rebuilt. I will have to say, I'm trying to think of a word other than exciting, because I know that word's been used at least at least 5 times since other people have done this. Unpredictable, right? I mean, I had no idea I had no idea be a journalist. I had no idea I would get to work. I've pretty much written for everywhere I've ever wanted to write. I've been published pretty much by every single place I've ever wanted to be published by. That's, not a lot of people can say that, and so I couldn't have predicted that, right? So it's been unpredictable.